Does fruit raise blood sugar? Well, of course it does, for diabetics and the insulin resistant. Now, I've shown this in a couple of previous videos, but I've received some flack from the pro-fruit folks who tell me I'm not waiting long enough to test my blood sugar. Instead of 1 hour after eating, they say I should wait 2 hours. And so for all those who've complained about this test is for you. Well, I have my beautiful wife, Benedicta, with me today. And, sweetie, what do you think about fruit? Are you for it or against it?
I'm for it.
She loves fruit. In fact,
I am for it.
You told me when you were a little girl in that village in Nigeria, you had fruit trees growing up all over the place, right?
Yes.
And sometimes those neighborhood boys would come into your land, your property, and start taking that fruit from your trees. How did you like that?
Really, what they were taking was the ones that fall on the ground, they take them. And
They weren't climbing up the trees.
They weren't climbing up the trees.
Okay.
You are not allowed to climb up the trees to take the ones up there. But anything on the ground that falls down, you can take. But my problem was, before I get up from bed, because I want to, go check them fruit out first before every other person comes. And they will go first. And when I wake up, their noise will wake me up from sleep. I will just rush at them like, get out of that place.
You chased those boys out of your compound, away from your property, because you considered even the fruit on the ground to be for yours alone.
Yeah.
In fact, we did a mission in the area where she grew up, and we worked with a guy that you had known as when you were both small. Yes. And one of the things he remembered about you is how you used to chase the boys around when they went after that fruit. So you had a reputation in that neighborhood as being the girl you don't mess with, because she loved her fruit. Well, anyway, we have some fruit to eat. Now, I've told you that one of the things that the fruit lovers criticize me for in some of the videos that I post is, number one, they don't like it that I would even suggest that fruit raises blood sugar. Okay. And I find that strange because anybody would know that that's true. It has all kinds of natural sugar. But secondly, they criticize me for for testing myself after 1 hour.
Okay.
And they all give the exact same answer. It must be 2 hours. One guy said, no, that's wrong. You must test it 2 hours. I was like, well, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, did he have an 11th commandment that said you have to test after 2 hours, not one? Well, I don't think he did. And but I can understand why the fruit lovers want you to test at 2 hours. Because at 2 hours, for many people who have pretty good pancreatic response, that blood sugar's already started going back down. So you're going to get a better number, at least some will, at 2 hours than you would at 1 hour when it's hitting its peak. Now, we're all different, and foods are different. So really, there is no law written in stone or anywhere else that says test at this time. For example, when I eat spaghetti or beans, pasta or beans, I normally will wait longer because pasta and beans break down slower if I want to catch my peak than I would if I was eating something that released its carbs in a hurry, like a potato.
Yeah.
But in this case, we have 1 apple apiece.
Yep.
And 1 mango apiece.
Yep.
And I think my apple is actually bigger than yours, and that hardly seems fair because you're the one that's going to do real well in this test. I mean, I know that. But at any rate, apple is apple. But big apples are a little more carbs than small apples. Anyway, 1 banana. Now, let's think about the carbs here. A banana this size, which would qualify as a large banana, is going to be around 30 grams or more of carbs.
Okay.
So that's not quite, but almost a candy bar's worth of carbs. An apple my size, maybe not yours, but an apple my size.
You want me to change my...
No, that's okay. An apple my size is probably close to 30 grams, maybe 28 grams, something like that, of carbs. So I'd say we're close to 30 and 30, and then the mango is around 50 grams of carbs, which is about a candy bar and a half worth of sugar. So there's a lot of sugar, folks, in these 3 fruit. Now, there are some people that say just eat fruit, and more fruit, And all your problems will go away eventually. They'll admit when you first do it, your numbers will skyrocket, but they'll suggest that if you do it enough and long enough and you're patient enough, eventually it'll come down. I'm not sure I buy that.
Yeah.
But I am to honor those folks who say wait 2 hours. We're going to do just that, except that we're going to test our blood sugar at 30 minutes after the meal, 1 hour after the meal, 1.5 hours after the meal, and 2 hours, and we're going to see how those numbers go. Now, I've been wrong enough that I don't ever say, I know it'll be this way.
Yep.
But I've been right enough, and I've done enough tests to know that there's an excellent chance that your numbers are going to be a whole lot better than mine.
Oh.
Because you're the normal one.
Yep.
And I am not. I have problems with blood sugar. So that much I can almost guarantee. In fact, if it doesn't happen that way, I think you'll have to take me to the morgue. I think I'll die of shock if I end up with lower numbers than you do.
Now, I don't know about dying of shock.
The other thing that we're going to consider is, when will our numbers peak? When I say peak, what I'm talking about is they'll hit the highest point. Because whenever you eat any food, whether it's really sweet or not so sweet, it's going to go to a certain point.
Yes.
It's going to peak, and it's get to the highest point, and then it'll start going back down. Because even though I have problems with sugar and processing carbs, my pancreas works, and it will spit out enough insulin eventually to get those carbs down, but it'll take a lot longer, and the numbers will go a lot higher normally than someone like my beautiful wife, who just simply doesn't have the kind of problems I do. And just as an indication, she had an 86 for her test before we just came on camera, before we ate, and I had a 114, which was really, really high. And I think all these tests I'm doing with high-carb foods is making me worse, and I'm eager to finish this business. I'm writing a book about it. And so I'm eager to get that book done and go back to my low-carb lifestyle and get those numbers back down, which they will go down, the Lord willing and helping, as I go more low-carb. But again, probably close to 30, probably 30. We're talking 60, 50 more, 110 grams of carbs. That should be enough to raise even your blood sugar somewhat.
Okay.
But I wouldn't be surprised if by 2 hours or even by 1 hour, it's already down significantly.
I'll be fine.
So, as with so many blood sugar tests, really all of them, we don't know for sure what's going to happen. I've not done this before. I did it with somebody else, and he had several large fruit, and his went up to 199 after 1 hour. But I didn't think to test him after 2. But I've had so many people say, test after 2, that we're going to do it, but we're going to also do after 30 minutes, 1 hour, 1.5, and then 2. So we'll get back, let you know what happened. Well, our fruit experiment is over. What did you think about that? How did you enjoy that little fruit experiment?
That was exciting.
It was exciting. She was complaining, though. You were a little complaining about it wasn't quite filling enough for you. I think you were ready for something else.
No, that was like after 1 hour, 1.5 hours. I wanted to take coffee or something.
Yeah,
really?
we had to just drink water, so we didn't want to affect the test by what we drank. And so we did 4 different tests, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 1.5 hours, in other words, and then the 2 hours just to satisfy the people that complained that I wasn't testing myself after 2 hours. Now, it's interesting that in both of our cases, we peaked around the same time, which was when? When did we get our highest numbers on these different tests?
That was around 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was at 30 minutes that we peaked, somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. By 1 hour, we had already started to go down.
Yeah.
So at your highest level, you were at what? What was your highest number?
My highest number was 146.
Yeah, 146, which is a bit high. Normally they say that your blood sugar should be between 80 and 120 if it was just absolutely ideal, hitting 120 as a peak. Yours went to 146, so that is a bit high, but considering all that fruit, that's really not too bad.
Yeah.
And that was at 30 minutes. Mine was a big old whopping 189 at 30 minutes. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of sugar in that fruit.
Yes.
And that sugar, when it gets into your bloodstream, it wastes no time at all.
Yeah.
You know, there are some carbs that it just takes a while for them to process and break down and turn into sugars, like beans.
Yes.
Nuts even have carbs, but they take forever, and they really don't affect blood sugar much. But the sugar in fruit breaks down in a hurry. So by 30 minutes, we had already both hit our peaks. Yours was 146, mine was 189. By 1 hour, your 146 had come down to what?
118.
118, which again is a very good and safe number. Mine hadn't come down too much. It was at 177, but it was on its way back down at just 1 hour. By 1.5 hours, Ben's was down to 110. Mine was down to mine had actually rose once, 1 point to 178, so almost identical. No change there. And then by 2 hours, the big 2-hour marker that all these fruit people love to talk about, your blood sugar was at
99.
99, so very good, pretty much a base level, although it had been lower than that to start with. Mine was still high, but it was on its way down, 163. Now, the good news is my pancreas works. Yours works better, but mine works pretty well. And it was spitting out a lot of insulin, a lot of pumping, a lot of working, a lot of struggling, all that insulin. And so if I just did the 2-hour test and forgot about the 30 minutes, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, if I just did the 2-hour test, I would look and say I got a 163, still too high. If you just did the 2-hour test and you knew nothing about these other tests, you'd think, well, it hardly budged at all, right?
Yeah, I would be like stuffing myself with fruit, like, it's so good, let's go.
Well, you wouldn't realize what happened.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem with some of the people that really push fruit. They always want to do a 2-hour test, never want to do anything else. Yeah. They don't notice the peak that's going on before that. Now, there's a couple of problems with that. First, when your blood sugar is going up and down, is not a good thing. Okay. They've done tests, and in fact, some researchers and doctors say that blood sugar that goes up and down is actually worse for you than blood sugar that just stays up all the time. Okay. That the up and down, up and down, up and down is just not a healthy situation at all. Okay. But there'd be a lot of people like you that would hardly think it's going up at all because they don't test it 30 minutes or 1 hour. They'd wait till 2 hours. So they say, well, look, my blood sugar isn't much different than it was to start. I can handle it. What they don't realize is there was a big bump. So that's one of the problems. And especially for me, who has more issues with blood sugar than my wife. Really, you have none at all, thank the Lord. The other problem is when your blood sugar is going up, if your pancreas is working very well, it's shooting up all kinds of insulin. So your insulin levels are going up too. And when your blood sugar goes down, guess what? Your insulin levels don't go down nearly so fast. Right now, my body is full of insulin, and yours has got too much in it as well. Even though your blood sugar is going down, that insulin hangs around much longer than the blood sugars. The problem with that is insulin by itself. Forget about the high blood sugar. Just a lot of insulin is unhealthy for you. It's doing damage. It's hardening your arteries. It can cause heart disease. There's all kinds of issues that come from people that flood their bodies with insulin because of eating lots of carbohydrates. So if fruit is really your thing and you say, man, it's healed me and I don't have problems, my 2-hour tests are good, check to see if you're peaking earlier. But most importantly, find out if your body's flooded with insulin. You may have 5 times as much insulin floating around in your bloodstream than a normal person would. And that, my friend, is not a healthy situation. In my case, even after 2 hours, I still wasn't very good. 163, not so good.
Yeah, not so good.
Now, was I a prophet or what? What did I say before we did this?
That I would do better
that you would do a lot better than me?
Yeah.
Did it work out that way?
It did.
Yeah. No, I'm not a prophet, but I've tested myself enough to know that this is exactly how it works. I simply have blood sugar issues that my wife, who is a bit younger than me, does not. And that's just the way it is. And so you have to make adjustments. So I'm still not sold on the just eat all the fruit you want to eat and you'll eventually be fine. I don't buy that. One person told me that I should go on a 3-day water fast and just drink nothing but water for 3 days, and then I could handle the fruit. But how often am I supposed to do that? Am I supposed to go through these 3-day water fasts all the time just so I can have a boatload of fruit? I don't buy it personally. But if it works for you, fine. As long as your insulin levels aren't too high and you're not bouncing all over the place, then good. I'm for whatever works for you. And I'm not saying you do it my way. You do it whatever way works for you and your doctor are satisfied. That's great. But the truth is, if your insulin is jacked way up day after day, you're not really doing yourself a favor. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been a little depressing, but I think it's been informative. If you did appreciate it, give it a thumbs up and give it a like. That will cause YouTube to rank it higher in their search engine and more people will be able to see it. And don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon. That way, every time we post a new video, you'll get to see it. And we love to hear from you. Comment, down below. If it's a reasonable comment, I'll reply. Now, some people, they call me stupid and so forth, and I'll typically just block them, and that's the last they'll ever see of our... You didn't know that, did you?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, oh yeah, I get my critics, usually from the people who are just plant-based. They hate the idea of eating meat. Some of them think it's just a horrible thing that we would eat dead animals. Oh. But, in the Bible... You find that all the time, so I don't worry about that.
Eat.
Kill and eat.
Oh, that means so. The Bible said
at any rate, be sure and subscribe if you're interested in this particular YouTube channel, and we'll try to get you some more good videos that will help you in your quest to overcome runaway blood sugar.